Ireland, a country known for nothing ever happening. But since Kaiserreich did an update to revamp Ireland, I thought I might as well check it out to make something out of this nation. Because while Ireland may be small, lightly populated, and barely industrialized, it can do a lot to shake up the status quo of the world, and I will create an Irish New World Order where they decide who runs the world and sets the agenda. So, relax in your pod and grab a nice helping of crickets. It's time to start subverting nations. Starting off, Ireland is one of the few countries in this mod that is doing better than they did historically since it's fully united. The new focus tree clearly has some effort put into it, with Ireland being able to go in any political direction it wants to. Fortunately, we only start with 2 military factories, but we can get help from Middle Europa, which just gives us free military factories. Easily the best choice of all the options. However, it depends on the AI nations to vote with me, and many times those nations won't think logically. Being a part of Middle Europa causes Black Monday to hit us especially hard, and we were not ready to be hit by this financial crisis. The government has to act soon, but the loyalists in the province of Ulster are demanding that they get prioritized for relief first, since they are the main source of industry in Ireland. This leaves me a choice. Do I prioritize Ulster and protect northern businesses, or do I try to help as many people as possible throughout Ireland? You only get 6 months to go through this focus branch, and I chose to do the focuses that would help the majority of people. The loyalists were not happy with that, but could at least accept that helping the majority of the country does kinda benefit them. The economy isn't the government's only worry. After an incident where a British submarine collided with an Irish ship, Ireland is getting a lot more foreign attention. The Union of Britain and Germany are competing to pull Ireland into their sphere of influence. But my plan is to just take them for a ride for the free stuff they'll give us, say how much we appreciate them and would love to get closer, then stay independent. Before doing our foreign policy focuses, I rush my military tree because I want to get this focus that allows me to send 4 more divisions as volunteers, so when the Spanish Civil War starts, we should be able to send 5 divisions. There is an election going on, but I'm just ignoring it because the way we're going, elections are irrelevant. The fact that I'm supporting the car list here should give a big hint as to where we're going. With all our volunteers, we're able to take advantage of the huge gaps in the Kingdom of Spain's line and give the car list the initiative they needed. Another Balkan War started, and while I wanted to help take down Bulgaria, I was fully committed to Spain. I upgraded the volunteer templates to make them more capable, and the election ends with the Social Conservative Party winning. But they didn't have the support they needed for a majority, so they had to make a coalition. And they chose to work with the National Development Party, which is full of loyalists. Those Anglophiles wanted a deal. Keep their special privileges in Ulster in exchange for their support, and the Social Conservatives just accepted it. This deal ended up getting leaked to the public, and the Irish people were furious that a deal like this was made. A coup was inevitable, and Ian O'Duffy rallied the blue shirts and decided it was time to take charge. But it wasn't smooth sailing yet. There was gonna be a power struggle to decide the direction of this government. Was Ireland just gonna be a normal military junta, or are we gonna go in a more esoteric direction? Events would pop up and I would empower the schizos in our political party, and the Kingdom of Spain was getting steamrolled by my Marines. Even though I was going fast, I needed to be a lot faster because the Belgrade Pact was getting smashed by Bulgaria, and I couldn't let that happen. The Irish volunteers locked in for the next month. Kingdom of Spain died very soon, and they just had to destroy Syndicalist Spain. But one breakthrough was all it took, and I could just run through them freely. It felt like they just gave up and wanted me to kill them. As soon as I walked into Barcelona, it was over, and I was on my way to save the Balkans. When I pulled up in Athens, it was looking really bad for the Belgrade Pact, but that didn't mean it was unsavable. I'd arrive just when I needed to go through some openings in the Bulgarian lines and pocket exposed Bulgarian divisions. In response, the Bulgarians would give me more opportunities to surround them. Even though they killed Serbia, it was looking kinda tough for Bulgaria. I know they must be mad at me since I ruined their imminent win, but you can't create a new world order without breaking some eggs. Now, as the influence game continued, the Union of Britain really wanted me back in their sphere. They didn't know how good they had it with the Irish until we were gone, but I wasn't about getting back with my ex, so I made sure to show off all the cool stuff Germany was getting me so they'd take a hint. Eventually, the Bulgarian lines thinned out enough, I wanted to do a bold play and rush Sofia. The Bulgarians weren't ready for it, and I took the capital pretty fast. Fortunately, that was all I needed to do to make the Bulgarians lose, and the traditional order in the Balkans had been shaken up. The next stop was Italy. The communists were winning, and I did not consent to that. So it was time to pull up in southern Italy and get these Sicilians to lock in against the leftists. The first place we moved to was Rome to make sure His Holiness was safe from those godless commies. Meanwhile, in Dublin, O'Duffy was trying to remain in charge and be slick, jailing opposition in the party, but it came back to bite him when the military found out and hit him with the "do you really feel in charge?" So he ended up arrested, and the national populists were fully in charge and said O'Duffy had betrayed the Gaelic race and Ireland was on its way back. The loyalists in Ulster really didn't like the sound of this, so they started gearing up to leave, and I had to worry about subduing those rebels. Back to Italy, I finally broke through the communist lines and got some initiative back for the Sicilians. Seeing that someone else is doing the hard work, the other Italian state decides they should go in too. I thought this was a wrap now because the Syndicalist army was just collapsing right in front of me and I cut off a bunch of their troops, but I forgot the Italians have been washed up in terms of warfare for nearly 2 millennia, so I gotta figure out how to kill this tiny remnant for them. I tried attacking through the city, but I won't lie, they had hands, so I was thrown back. Back home, we're still deciding who should run things. The O'Neill family was the rightful ruler of the Kingdom of Ireland centuries ago, and it only makes sense for them to come back and restore Ireland to its former greatness, as well as return to its roots. In Italy, I finally realized that I could just send my volunteers to the Italian Federation and attack from there to finish the commies off, and once I got in position, it was curtains for Mussolini. Now, you may be wondering why I haven't gone to America at this point, and that's cause I was hoping to support New England, since that's where most Irish people lived, but Canadians were taking forever to intervene and let the CSA take over most of the country. So, while I'm waiting for them to eventually intervene, I'm going to Egypt to try to stop the Ottoman Empire. As soon as I arrived, Ottoman elves were stacking up, even encircled the Germans helping them in Cairo. I had shown up to start a major turnaround for the Egyptians, but then Canada finally declared on the CSA and I had to go. Have to take care of our people in New England, and unsurprisingly, the Egyptians immediately fell apart with our departure. Once we deployed, we wasted no time running down the CSA troops in New York City and going through New Jersey, but I couldn't help but notice the Canadians were completely fumbling, already losing Toronto and getting pushed to Ottawa. Obviously, Canada dying would make this way harder for me, so we got ready to throw the CSA back and liberate Toronto. Battle-hardened Marines versus a random factory worker. It wasn't even fair. Toronto, however, was back in Canadian hands, and I saw the potential for a juicy pocket on the CSA. It wasn't even hard to get, and I knew I got an entire army up here. It took a while to crush the pocket because of all the troops in it, but it felt so satisfying to be done with. However, some of the troops were defying all game logic by not counting as encircled and still getting supplied. I still killed them after some time, and the next goal was to put the Entente back on the offensive to take down the CSA. Our volunteers were now all Marines, and those poor factory workers really didn't stand a chance. Detroit was going to be liberated, and Michigan was looking like free real estate. The Second Weltkrieg finally kicked in Europe, and people were trying to tell the king, maybe it's time to retake our ancestral homeland in Scotland, but we had no time for that when America was still in jeopardy. We locked down Michigan, and then from Buffalo, I went on the attack to destroy the CSA army threatening New England. We went on a march to the sea through Pennsylvania, and it ended with the liberation of Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. As I went through killing the surrounded forces, I knew that this war was solidly in New England's favor. But I looked east and I could see that once again, Two Sicilies was losing their war despite the last war leaving them in control of most of Italy. Now, to be the most incompetent of the Italians is an accomplishment. The Sicilian soldiers have to be going into combat like... At least it wasn't hard to turn their war around. Within a week and a half, the Federation army was encircled and the Irish Marines could just moonwalk to Milan. Two Sicilies beat the Italian Federation, and I had finally accomplished my goal of uniting Italy under Nat Pop rule. But sadly, they would go against my desires and join the Reichspakt. I trained up 8 more divisions that I could send to the United States. By sending volunteers to both New England and Canada, I could have 17 divisions as volunteers for the American Civil War, and somehow I was able to place them under the same field marshal, although it was very scuffed. Unsurprisingly, the Entente left it to their Irish puppet masters to finish the job for them. The factory workers with rifles were just too scary for the professional soldiers, and the battle-hardened Irish had to make the big plays for them. I would cook pretty hard for them, giving them some juicy pockets in the Appalachians, followed by taking Chicago and making another pocket in Indiana. After this, it was just going around to major American cities to let them know that the Irish were responsible for their liberation. It took a while, but the CSA soon capitulated, and New England would reign supreme over America, destroying any chance of a syndicalist presence in the Americas. It was long overdue, but now it's time for me to start getting involved in the Second Weltkrieg. I wanted to make sure Nat Pop Russia would beat the Reichspakt. The Kaiserreich had to go for national populism to rule over Europe, and it would start with me backing up my boys in the Balkans. I carried them to this point, so they must have been happy to have me back. The Irish Marines were ready to kill some Krauts, but were not ready to get bombed by them. I kept probing their lines just to get the same result. However, I was not insane, cause I knew if I kept doing the same thing, things would change, and it did. Somehow, the Belgrade Pact got air superiority, so our Marines were able to lock in and start making moves. My Marines were dishing out punches the Reichspakt couldn't take, and we were cleaning up. It was smooth sailing to Budapest, and once that was taken, we did another march to the sea through Illyria. The AI would appear to be attempting to stop me, but the Irish Marines were like the juggernaut. Once they started moving, they couldn't stop. We ended up surrounding an entire army and a half in Illyria, which, if you're wondering how many men that is, about 350,000. I was ready to take the fight to Vienna, but to avoid the shame of losing Vienna to the Irish, the Austrians surrendered all the land the Belgrade Pact wanted, meaning the Balkan power balance had been shifted exactly as I planned. I was done pushing my agenda through other countries. It was time for me to interfere in the war directly. Our Marines planned the invasion of our ancestral lands to liberate it from the tyrannical rule of the British. We didn't have much of a fleet for supremacy. Our plan was to hope the British Navy just wouldn't show up. And our prayers were answered. The British fleet never got out of bed. Clearly had a fear of what the Irish Marines were capable of. We landed in Scotland with ease and quickly tried to secure the area, only for Canada to arrive just after me and steal occupation of rightful Gaelic land. I definitely wasn't vibing with the Canadians taking control of the land, but I figured I'd just wait for the peace deal so I could get it back. The Union of Britain was barely a warm-up for the Marines. The country fell so easily. But at least the peace deal triggered very fast, and I was able to grab most of the island, with Germany just holding on to England. I came to Scotland as liberators for the Gaelic people, and while we're out here enjoying the win, the locals are looking at us like we just farted in a crowded room with them. I started preparing my invasion to finish off France, and I'm glad I didn't end up taking England because Canada declared war on Germany over it. Landing in France is just a breeze for my Marines, and we're on the Tour de France until we meet up with the Germans in Paris. When we get to Paris, the French finally feel like fighting back, and I just realized looking through the footage that they actually killed one of my Marine divisions. But could have been worse. It could have been 2 Marine divisions. Instead, it was just 1 4/5. Eventually, the Germans took Paris, and it was curtains for the Third Internationale. I got a good chunk of France, but I wasn't satisfied with everything yet. The Gallic Kingdom needed full control of what will soon be the Gallic Isles, and Western Europe as well. My army was so tiny, I couldn't even guard my homeland. The Homeland Defense Plan was just thoughts and prayers. So hopefully the Reichspakt would be so busy with Russia they wouldn't want to invade little old Ireland. Now initially it went pretty rough for me. I lost 3 Marines nearly instantly, and the AI is already planning an invasion of the Isles. You could say I was getting a little nervous about fumbling this campaign when I was so close to the end. I decided to go all in on France to push the Germans back because I had to risk it all to win, because failing this run again after spending the last 2 days trying to record it would have me like... I should just kill myself. I knew Germany didn't have much longer. I managed to capitulate their French puppet state, and the Russians were pushing deeper into eastern Germany. Capitulating France made the Germans feel like they needed more units to fight me, thus making it easier for the Russians to make progress. I was doing everything I could to scrape manpower out of Ireland, but I just had to face the fact that this island was empty when the daily recruitment list is looking like this. I couldn't just ignore the Italians landing in the Gallic Isles though. I was forced to fall back so I could send some troops to deal with those Italians. They were up there ruining everything I was trying to build, and my puppets couldn't do anything, so I had to respond fast. Good thing I backed the Italians that were really bad at fighting wars, so it wasn't much of a challenge to retake the Gallic Isles from them. Also, the Russians had fully collapsed the German lines in the east, taking Berlin, so Germany only had a couple weeks left. The goal now is just to take as much of Western Europe as possible for direct Gallic administration. With the collapse of Germany, all that remained was Austria and Italy, and while it hurt to get rid of Italy after all I did for them, they had to go for us Gallics to reign supreme. Last thing on the list was to push through the Alps to kill Austria, and I don't get how the Italians struggled with this for 3 years in World War I. In 3 weeks we're already through, but to be fair, at this point, every Irish Marine is as combat effective as a Terminator, so it's understandable why it's so easy for them. We were robbed of the chance 3 years ago, but the Irish finally took Vienna, and the humiliation was just too much for Austria, so they surrendered. The old guard of Europe was gone, and I would take my share of the European pie. When the peace deal was over, the Gallic Kingdom fully controlled the Isles, along with France, the Low Countries, Western Germany, and Italy. I of course did bring back the Papal States, because as a fervent Catholic, His Holiness needed to be strong. My new world order had been created. Almost all of Europe is being ruled by national populists, and even Japan was with us without me doing anything. The Irish would have great influence and control the United States, which will eventually dominate the Entente, so everything is looking up for the Gallic New World Order. I hope you guys enjoyed this campaign and seeing me reshape the world as Ireland. If you did, remember to leave a like so other people will see this video, and subscribe for more good content to come. Shout out to my alumni on Patreon funding my globalist ambitions. I really appreciate the support you guys give me on there. Anyways, hope to see y'all again soon.